Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. I'm Danielle Van, a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach, meditation teacher, and author. And this is your go-to show for a powerful blueprint of personal growth and empowerment, where we dig into the 5 master areas of your life: emotional, mental, physical, spiritual, and financial health and well-being. So if you're tired of feeling stuck and are ready to break through the barriers holding you back, whether it's trauma or you simply don't have the tools, you found the right place. We're combining Eastern and Western medicine with real, raw, unapologetic conversation to shake up your mindset, elevate your life, help you release the old, and help you become the very best version of yourself. When was the last time you asked yourself, where did this feeling come from? Life is obviously filled with lessons and challenges and emotions that come and go unexpectedly. But when we ask ourselves these questions of where did this feeling come from, we give ourselves the ability to understand how our emotions influence our experience and how in retrospect we can provide our own healing and growth. So today we're taking a one-on-one deep dive into exploring how to identify the root cause of reoccurring feelings. And I'm going to guide you through a few proven journaling techniques that are going to help you release emotions that no longer serve you. So let's not waste another second. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. We've all had those moments, right, where something boils up and we can't quite figure out why we feel the way that we do. It's just this sort of gurgling of emotions, and it doesn't always feel great, but we know that it's present. Those emotions, those moments are actually really, really important. The reason why is they tend to sort of marinate in our minds, and it shifts our mindset. It shifts how we feel and our everyday experience from that time until we get rid of the emotion or move through the emotion is impacted by those feelings. So we want to explore where our root feelings are coming from, especially these feelings that keep coming up over and over and over again. Because I know I am not the only person who's had an emotional reaction to something what feels very seemingly small or unrelated, only to realize that it's tied to something in the past or a memory. Last week, we were talking on the show about triggers. That is a true trigger when we're feeling the emotional swell come up. And maybe it's a reaction to somebody's words or an action that caught you off guard or a situation that invokes a familiar yet puzzling emotional response. But those emotional triggers are often the result of unprocessed feelings from the past. And when we process them, when we understand them, is when we heal. So let's talk about emotions. We need to understand the role of emotions, right? Because they're powerful. So often people get confused about the difference between an emotion and a feeling. Feelings are how they present in our body. We feel them. That's why it's a feeling. ING. We have an action that's happening, right? Verb. And our emotions are the impulses, the signals. So they're powerful, right? They are our body's way of reacting and processing the world around us. They use the nervous system to take in the body language around us, the energy around us, the feelings that are happening in our space. Emotions really signal to us, hey, this is what's going on within us. And they can point to, say, unmet needs or unresolved conflict or a past wound. And when we leave them unchecked, right, when we're not focused on them, when we're not processing, when we're not getting uncomfortable, when we're not sitting in it and trying to work our way out, they can absolutely dominate our lives. Like I said, it influences our behavior, it influences our decisions, and it influences our relationships. And let me ask you this question. This is a big one. It's something that I see so often, very important to recognize. But if you are somebody who's ever felt stuck in a particular or similar emotional reaction Understand that you are in a space where hidden emotion or a root cause hasn't been sort of flushed out, right? Maybe it's anger, or maybe it's sadness, or anxiety keeps resurfacing time and time again. These emotional patterns can create a cycle, right? The space that we're doing the same thing over and over again, where you feel overwhelmed by the emotion and would rather try to control them than to work through them. Control when it comes to emotions is such a big thing. And unfortunately, it really is a mistake. I'm going to say that again. It is a mistake to try to control. Now, that is different than being in a moment and trying to control your reactions. What I'm talking about here is trying to suppress, trying to make it smaller, trying to make it something different than it is, that kind of control. If I told you that you had the power to interpret that cycle and make sense of the emotion so that you can lead yourself to healing, would you do it? Right? If I told you, hey, by the way, I have a tool or several tools that you could use that are going to help you process what you're feeling and therefore have more control over your reactions and your life, would you say, okay? Because I do, right? I do. I have that for you. And it's also important that before we get to that, before I give you that treasured gift, really, I need you to learn the importance of identifying root causes of things. Here's a big thing. Emotions do not exist in isolation. They are byproducts of something deeper, of something more. So if you're constantly experiencing the same emotion, fear, frustration, sadness, even joy, it's essential to ask, what is the root of this? Where is this coming from? The key to unlocking your emotional well-being and your emotional intelligence is identifying the underlying causes of your emotions and understanding that they keep appearing in my life and therefore they keep wanting my attention. I want you to think about it this way. I want you to imagine yourself walking down a road and every few steps you encounter a pothole. And really, you don't even see these potholes coming up. But the pothole is your emotional reaction. And it keeps tripping you up, right? You keep falling in, creating frustration, slowing you down. If all you did while you were walking along your path was focus on the potholes, patching them temporarily or avoiding them altogether, you would never address the underlying issue. What caused the pothole to begin with? Maybe it was a cracked road that needed to be repaired, or maybe it was a cracked emotion or cracked experience that needed to be repaired. But yet we're still just walking in this landscape of holes, keep falling in, having to be pulled back out, and yet not doing anything to repair the road itself. And that's what I'm talking about. We need to repair our roads. We need to get into a space where we identify, hey, I got hit by a Mack truck 52 times and it created this emotional response. And I don't want to live this way. I don't like the way that I feel. And I need to do something about my emotions surrounding the original moment. That is really the assignment, right? If you keep tripping up and you're creating frustration and you need to do something different, do something different. Okay? I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm just saying maybe that would change your experience. If I do something different than what hasn't been working, maybe something changes. How though? How do we do something different? We really need to lean into awareness and introspection, right? Many people avoid going inward, introspection, because they believe that it's too uncomfortable, it's too complicated. And yet the truth about going inward is it's very simple, okay? And it's actually very powerful. And it is the way that you get to emotional growth. When you turn inward into your inner world, you observe your thoughts and your feelings and you recognize the patterns that are influencing your behavior. You begin to break down why. It's through this process that you can begin to uncover the root causes of your emotions. And it's here that real transformation begins, right? You can't do it without it. So the key to effective introspection is self-awareness, right? We're talking about that every time we come together and have conversation, is that you have to be aware. There has to be intentionality. If not, if you operate in your life without that, you are dealing with control issues. You're dealing with feeling disconnected from life. There's so much. But when you begin to really break down, you begin to notice these reoccurring emotional patterns or reactions, and you take a moment to pause and you ask yourself, where is this coming from? What is this feeling trying to tell me? You've heard me say these sentences before. And you say, is this my current reality, or is this linked to something else? You begin to understand yourself. Let's talk about triggers for just a moment. I mentioned the word just a few minutes ago, but sometimes our emotions are triggered. And I said last week, I don't like the word triggers. We should stop using it. And that is the truth, because everywhere we turn, oh, I was triggered. You triggered me into this. No, you need to understand what a trigger is before using it like that. When our emotions are triggered by external events or interactions that we fully don't understand, we begin to feel the same thing that we felt prior. It is actually connected to a past event. It's the only way you're actually triggered. And you might find yourself feeling irritable or, upset after an encounter or something that, is not settling well. And these interactions can feel super disproportionate than the event at hand. That is a very big key indicator that you've been triggered. It's because the situation triggered an unresolved issue, a past emotional experience, one that may or not consciously be sitting in your brain, but it's still influencing your emotional state. That's a trigger. Okay? A critical part of going inward to yourself is learning how to observe those emotional triggers. What are the situations or the people that tend to evoke the strongest reactions from you? I know I have those people in my life. I know you do too, right? And you're like, why do I always feel like crap when I'm around them? It is this experience. Is there a common thread? A trend? That's one thing I always ask. Is there something that you can look at that reoccurs every time you're with that person? Is it that they were just nasty? Is it that they continue to poke the bear per se, right? And they get into that space with you that you're like, oh, do you feel anxious when you face uncertainty? Or do you feel angry when someone challenges your authority? Or whatever it is. But once you identify these emotional triggers, you can start to ask, why are these so powerful? And you can start to unroot the cause. One big thing that I love when it comes to this experience is journaling. And I know writing isn't for everyone, but let me just tell you, when you put pen to paper and you allow yourself to just go there without worrying about being judged, or you're worrying about what other people's reactions are or anything, you begin to uncover so much and you begin to release, which is huge. So let's do some practical tools for journaling. Now, please understand, you can go to the show notes. I'm going to write these out for you, these journaling methods, so that all you have to do is follow the steps. Okay? So if you're in a space right now that you can't take notes, know that you can go to my website, or you can go to whatever platform you're listening to this on, and you can look at the methods, the way to do this. So remember, journaling is one of the most effective ways to release emotional baggage. Why? Right? That's the question, why? And it's because writing down your thoughts and feelings allows you to process them objectively and over time. And like I said earlier, patterns will emerge that help you understand this landscape a lot more clearly. So I'm going to walk you through this journaling technique that'll help you identify and release those emotions. And this is something that it takes some practice, and I want you to not get frustrated with yourself, and I want you to also come to the table with no judgment, right? Because your emotions are really your travel mates. They go with you everywhere. They influence everything. So this technique is called trigger and release, and it can be incredibly transformational if you practice it. So the first one is to identify a trigger. And this seems like, well, I have to be actively looking for a trigger. Well, we can actually work on a situation from the past to get into the practice of this. So write down a situation that triggered you into having a strong emotional reaction. And I want you to be as detailed as possible. Describe what happened, what you felt, who was involved, where you were. The more detail, the better. And that's step 1. Step 2 is to explore the emotion that came with it. So you're going to dig a little deep into that emotion that you felt. Was it anger? Was it sadness? Was it frustration? Was it anxiety? What was it? And I want you to write down the intensity of that emotion. Give yourself a scale, right? From 10 to 0, 0 being it wasn't really that bad, but I know I was triggered. And 10 being, I felt like the world was ending. This emotion was crashing down on me, really putting all this weight and pressure on me. That's 10, right? So write about the intensity once you've given a number. And I want you to really try to identify when you first noticed the emotion. And does it feel similar? Does it feel familiar? Do you know that you've had this experience over and over again in maybe similar situations or even opposite situations, but the emotion's still coming up? So step 2, explore the emotion. And then step 3, I want you to trace it back. I want you to try to connect the current emotional situation or reaction to a past event or an experience. And so ask yourself, when have I felt this way before? Or what past experience is this reminding me of? Often you'll uncover that root cause of the emotion, right? And saying that it's tied to something or a belief or something else that hasn't had any resolve, right? So say there was a relationship that ended and you didn't have closure, and you are in places and situations where you find yourself grasping onto relationships. And every time there's a little bit of a hiccup, you say, are you mad at me? Are you upset with me? Or this relationship's ending, and you feel all of this, impending doom of being abandoned, of being left. And you realize it isn't about this experience. It's about 5 relationships back. This is what we're talking about. That's the root cause. You have something that you haven't fully resolved. And I want you to try to get there. Right now, don't try to, force something to make sense, but can you find it? And step 4 is challenge it, right? Challenge the belief, challenge the perception. Once you have found the root cause or something that feels organic about the situation, challenge the belief, challenge the perception that's associated with the emotion. If you feel unworthy after, say, a critique at work, ask yourself, is this belief about myself truly accurate? Does this one incident define my worth? Is the person that has the critique in full acknowledgement of who I am or what I do or, every angle of the situation? Generally not. So reframing these negative beliefs can really help us move past them. And then step 5 is to release and let go, right? So we write the letter to ourselves or to the people involved, and we express our feelings, offering closure, empathy, grace, forgiveness, understanding, whatever it needs to be, right? And you don't need to send your letter. You just need to write out in a powerful way that allows you to release the emotion and let go of the moment. This journaling technique has been a very powerful one for many people, and I really encourage you to give that a try. And you can also try the next thing, which is an exercise to understand yourself a lot better. Of course, we talk about that so much here on the podcast. And if you can do a little bit of exploring, then you can understand your emotional triggers and your patterns. So the first one is to take a moment to really do an emotional inventory. Take a few moments each day to really take note of this dominant emotion that you're feeling. Whether it is the prevailing emotion you thought about or felt throughout the day, or perhaps something that you were triggered and it lasted longer than other things. Try to connect the emotion to a past experience and really keep track each day, like an emotional inventory, right? For at least a week. And at the end of the week, I want you to reflect on the patterns that emerged. That's a really powerful way to get into a space of looking at the root causes of why you feel what you feel. Another thing that you can do is really take a reflective pause. The next time that you feel a strong emotion rising, whether that is anger or sadness or anxiety or whatever else it is, pause and ask yourself, what's really happening here? Is this feeling tied to something deeper, right? And take a moment to breathe and reflect or try to trace the emotion to its root cause. And this pause can create space between the emotion reaction and the behavior that is happening because of the feeling. And that really helps you make a conscious and aware choice. It's something I love to do myself. It is a practice. You will mess it up. You hear me say that all the time, but you will. But that's a good one. Another one, and the last one that I want to offer you, is to create a timeline of your events, right? Create a timeline of your life, marking these significant emotional moments, these milestones. They could be moments of joy, the birth of a child, the marriage that you've longed for, whatever it is. It could be heartbreak. It can be success, failure. But reflect on these moments that have shaped your emotional responses because they are still in action today. Okay? So if you don't do anything to handle unresolved feelings, they still have a hold on you. They still come up. And so if you do this timeline of events and really take an emotional inventory of your life, you can look at the things that still have power over you. What do you want to do with them? Do you see anything that needs to be resolved? I know for me, one big thing that happened in my life, and I think we've talked about it a little bit here on the podcast, was my son, who's now 12, was born early. I went into preterm labor with him. He was in the NICU. We nearly lost him. It was something that had such a strong hold on me for so long until I did the emotional work around it. And so, do you have an experience like that you would rather not touch? And if you do, can you put a little bit of attention on it? Can you crack the door open? And if it feels too big, but it's something that you know you need to resolve, call me, right? Log on to my website, get a one-on-one session. Let's get through it, right? Or find somebody in your area that you feel good about being with. Whatever it is, if something's holding you back, if something's got a hold on you, it's in your behavior. It's in your feelings. And that can do more damage than good over time. And you definitely want to take some time, take some emotional balance, create some center, and do the things that are going to help you be your best self, right? So I want to kind of just wrap up with this thought. I know that there's so much that I've offered to you as far as journaling and how to get to the root cause. And those just scratch the surface, of course. But I want to leave you with this. Your emotions are not inherently bad, and they're most certainly not anything you need to avoid. They are really powerful signals, right? They're guiding you into a deeper self-awareness, into growth, into understanding how you're feeling and what's going on with you. When you begin to identify the root of those feelings and begin to engage with practices like going inward and journaling, you begin to release those emotional baggages that are no longer serving you, that you're dragging around, you're holding hostage, really. And you begin to move forward into a much more peaceful state because you realize I can leave the bag where it belongs in the past. I don't have to carry this anymore. You have to remember that your emotions are not enemies. They are teachers. And when you learn to understand them, you can transform the way that you relate to yourself and the world around you, right? And so I encourage you to embark on this experience, on this part of self-discovery, on this part of emotional understanding, and use the tools and the techniques that we talked about today to really help you get into a sense of freedom. Because without it, it's just stale. It really begins to take over and things just keep resurfacing, right? You feel the anxiety, you feel the anger, the sadness, the fear. What is this emotion trying to tell me? You don't need to carry the heavy bag anymore, right? So just to give you a quick rundown of those questions, where is this feeling coming from? That's number 1. Is this emotion linked to something in my past? That's 2. What belief do I have about myself or others that's influencing this emotion? That's 3. What am I avoiding or suppressing that's making this emotion feel so overwhelming? That's 4. And 5 is, what do I want to do about it? It's very important to identify, trace it back, reframe, and then let it go, right? These are teachers, not life sentences. Because when you do that, when you live your life through that approach, is when you have your life together. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you enjoyed these tips for bettering your life, please follow me on social media, if you're not already, at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Clapper, Threads, Lemonade, Insight Timer. Every single Monday morning at 9 a.m. Central, I am doing a live conversation much like this episode where I'm giving you tools and techniques around a particular subject, and you get to ask questions live, and it is free. You can find that on Insight Timer, which is also a free app. Go to your app store and find it there. You can also visit my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com, where you'll find my blog, a merch store, more in-depth pieces to our show notes and our experience here together on the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. So much there. Take a look. And I want to encourage you to please share this episode or review the podcast if you haven't already, as it does help spread the message to those who may need it. Until we meet again, be kind to yourself and others.